of July 29, 1966, where the Igbo leadership of the country and military were killed by northern mobs and northern soldiers. The anti-Igbo genocide or pogroms, which started in May 1966 and reached its peak by October 1966, where hundreds of thousands of Igbo were killed, decapitated, pregnant women had their wombs cut open, and the fetuses thrown out, and another offspring of the January 15, 1966 military coup was the secession of Eastern Nigeria and declaration of the Republic of Biafra, and ultimately the Nigeria-Biafra War, which hundreds of thousands of Igbo civilians believed to have died in the pogroms, genocide, aforesaid, with further certainly more than 1 million, if not much more, dying in the Civil War. The counter-coup and pogroms of 1966, I dare say, were a direct fallout of that military coup of January 15, 1966, of that ill-advised military coup of January 15, 1966, which decapitated the leadership of the other geopolitical groups outside the Igbo Eastern region. Since whether this was a coincidence or not is beside the point, suffice to say that since the January 15, 1966 coup, my Igbo ethnic nationality has been treated with suspicion and contempt, and at the very least provocation are victims of physical violence in northern Nigeria and verbal violence, to say the very least, in western Nigeria. In spite of which the Igbo have continued to thrive economically. But I do believe that the time has come, and as the Bible says, and now is. The time has come and now is, when we must interrogate these issues dispassionately, without emotion, without sentiment. And that's what I propose to do in this series of discussions. And the first question I want to take as we interrogate this is, was the January 1966 coup an Igbo coup? And my answer, my short answer is both yes and no. It was an Igbo coup and it was not an Igbo coup. And you will understand me in a moment. Many commentators of Igbo origin have insisted that it was not an Igbo coup. And they have said, among some disingenuous arguments, that Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu is not Igbo because he comes from Okpanam across the River Niger in Igbo-speaking Midwest, now Delta State. Disingenuous because, on the one hand, the Igbo of the Eastern region insists that the whole of the Delta North Senatorial District, where Nzogu's Okpanam is, and where my Okwe, Asaba, is, and an Ikwere land in River State, and parts of Benue are Igbo speaking, and then this disingenuous argument that Kaduna Nzogu is not Igbo because his name, Kaduna, is not an Igbo name. How about Chukwuma and how about Nze, or the king of medicines, or the king of war, fight, as you want to interpret it. So it's a disingenuous argument. Another disingenuous argument is that privates and corporals, sergeants of different ethnic nationalities were part of that coup. And that argument deliberately forgets the fact that in the military command culture, it is not a sergeant who gives instruction to a colonel or to a major, it's a major who gives instruction. And historically it has been encapsulated in writing that Major Nzogu, who controlled some influence in the army in northern Nigeria, simply informed the rank and file that they were going on military training, and they followed him into what was a well-planned coup. But even if they knew that there was a coup and they followed him willingly, how will the presence of a sergeant how would the presence of a Yoruba sergeant transform a coup to a Yoruba coup when he was acting under the command and control of IGBO officers? All that, those arguments are disingenuous, and they have worsened the case for my fellow Igbo. But I said yes and no. That coup was an Igbo coup and it was not an Igbo coup. It was an Igbo coup, obviously. You can get my drift, because, let me repeat, it was and it was not an Igbo coup. An Igbo coup because 80% of the command structure of that coup, Major Sifa Juna, Nzeogu, Anuforo, Onwa Tue, Chukwuka, Captain Wobosi, I may have missed out a couple of others. We are Igbos. They were Igbo, they were Igbos. But it was not an Igbo coup. And you will now see where I'm going to. Because that coup was stopped in its tracks by two Igbo officers. The general officer commanding, Major General Johnson Thomas Umunakwe Agui Ironsi, and the commandant of the military, Ironsi. So I would think that this should have been a better argument than the outright denial by my compatriots. My compatriots insist it wasn't an Igbo coup. That is not a good argument. The better argument is that yes, our kith and king fought that coup, and yes, our kith and king stopped that coup. That makes us look more honest, if you don't mind. And that's the tragedy of Nigeria, that today, Ndi Igbo are held responsible for the decapitation of the military and political leadership of the other major ethnic nationalities